Masechet Zevaḥim Daf Ayin Vav. The Mishnah teaches Asham shenitarev bishlamim. Rabbi Shimon Omer shenehem ishhatu basafon v'yachlu kehamur shebahen. If you have an animal that's designated to be a korban asham that gets mixed up with a shelamim, now what do we do? Rabbi Shimon says, this is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, is Stam Rabbi Shimon. He says, take them and slaughter both of them in the north. Now, an asham is kodesh kodashim and has to be slaughtered in the north. Shelamim is kodashim kalim. It can be slaughtered anywhere in the courtyard, but it can also be slaughtered in the north, so just do them both in the north. And the procedure for them is similar, so therefore you can just do both of them in a similar way and do all the blood services and all that and put a part of it on the mizbeach, and the rest of it will be eaten as the more stringent of them. Well, shelamim is more lenient. That's kadashim kalim, can be eaten by anybody who's tahor in the city of Yerushalayim for 2 days, a day, a night, and a day. Asham is kodesh kadashim, and therefore can only be eaten by kohanim, only in the courtyard, only for a day and the night. And so you'll just eat both of them. There's 2 animals there, or however many got mixed up with each other. So just make sure that only Kohanim eat it in the temple courtyard, only for 1 day and 1 night. And therefore, if you do treat both of them according to the stringencies of Asham, then you can use both animals and both will be perfectly valid. Amru lo en mevi'in kadashim lebet hapesul. However, the other sages disagreed with Rabbi Shimon and said, we do not want to bring a sacrificial animal to being invalid. How so? Well, a shelamim, if you, let's say you didn't eat the whole thing, all the meat that you're allowed to eat in the day and the night, now what happens the next day? Well, if it's Asham, then it's notar and you have to burn it. You have to destroy it. Now we're going to do that with the shelamim also, but really the shelamim is totally valid and can be still eaten on the second day. And so by doing it in this way, we're going to end up, hopefully they could eat everything in 1 day. But if they don't, then we're going to end up taking perfectly valid, kosher, sacrificial meat and burning it and making it pasul when really it's not pasul. And therefore the sages say, no, this is not the best way to do it. Rather, we can treat this mixture the same as we did other mixtures in the Mishnah, which is to wait until it gets a blemish, and then after they get blemished and they can't be sacrificed, then you can redeem them for money and use the money to buy new animals that you'll designate clearly whatever it is going to be. Nit'arebu chatichot b'chatichot, kodshe kodashim b'kadashim kalim, hanechalim liyom echad, b'nechalim l'shnei yamim v'layla, yachlu kechamor shebahen. Now, if the animals were already slaughtered, you see this machloket only applies when the animals are alive. Then you could decide, like Rabbi Shimon, to sacrifice them, or you could decide to wait till they get a blemish and redeem them. However, if they were already slaughtered, and now you have they're butchered up, and you have pieces of meat, and some are from a shelamim, and some are from an asham, and you don't know which is which, or any other case where there's kodshe kodashim mixed up with kodashim kalim, those that are eaten for 1 day, or any time you have something mixed up with pieces of meat that can only be 1 day, with other pieces of meat that are allowed to be eaten for 2 days, so then the Kohanim should eat them all according to the most stringent, which is 1 day. In that case, even Rabbi Shimon would agree, because this is all, even Chachamim rather would agree, because now there's no longer the possibility that Chachamim say to take the animals and redeem them. Now it's just pieces of meat. You can't redeem them anymore. So here, Chachamim will agree with Rabbi Shimon that you treat them according to the most stringent among them. Tane tana kame de rav shvi'it en lokhin bedameha teruma mipnei shema'atin ba'achilata. A Tana, a professional memorizer, recited the following Tosefta in front of Rav. If you have money of Shvi'it, you took Shvi'it produce and you sold it, and you have here $100 of Shvi'it. Let's say you had some olives that grew on their own and permitted. So you're allowed to have something that grows on its own during Shavuot, and it should be freely available for anyone. And anyone is allowed to store even a little bit while there are still those olives out in the field, or whatever kind of vegetable or fruit it is. You can have a little bit of it while they're still available out in the field. Now, if you sell it, now you have $100 of olive money that you got from proceeds of olives. That money you can use to buy food as long as there are olives out in the field. But as soon as there's no more olives in the field, then you're not allowed to use that anymore. Same way as if you had olives, you would have to bring it out to stored up in your house. You'd have to bring it out for anyone to use or destroy it. So then that $100 could not be used anymore. So this Shavuot money is of limited time use. You cannot use that money to buy terumah. Why? Because then you're limiting the possibility of eating terumah. Let's say you're a Kohen, so you can eat terumah. Great. Terumah doesn't have a time limit. You can eat it as long as it's still good and edible. And so by taking the Shavuot money and using it, the Shavuot money is from olives, and let's say olives stay for a month out in the field. So then you cannot use it any more than a month. And so now they're buying terumah. Now the terumah is going to be inedible, prohibited to eat after 1 month. And you should not limit terumah because it's a mitzvah to eat terumah. That's the Tosefta. Amaru Rabbanan kameh de Rabbah. Ha de la kedebi Shimon, de kedebi Shimon. Amaru bin kodashim lebet hapesul. So I said this in front of Rabbah, and they suggested that this Tosefta must be against the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah. Because if it were like Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah said that you can offer Asham and Shelamim together, and even though that will mean that the Shelamim will be of more limited time that you can eat it, and then it'll be Pasul, and now we're taking Kodashim and making them Pasul, and Rabbi Shimon says, it's okay, you can still do that. That's his ruling in our Mishnah. So therefore, it seems that this opinion is not Rabbi Shimon, because if it was Rabbi Shimon, just like he says, you can allow something to be pasul in our Mishnah, he would say, you can allow the terumah to have a time limit and then be pasul. So that's okay. Use the Shavuot money, buy terumah, even though it will have a time limit when there's no more olives in the field and you can't eat that terumah anymore. And so he would say that's okay. So therefore, it must be the Tosefta according to Rabbanan in our Mishnah. Amar lehu afilu timru Rabbi Shimon hanemele di'i abad lecha techila la. However, Rabbah responded to the other sages. He says, no, you can even say that this Tosefta is Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah only said it's allowed b'di'avad. You already have this mixture of Asham and Shelamim. You didn't make the mixture of animals on purpose. Now that it's already mixed, okay, what are we going to do? Well, let's try to offer these animals as is, because that'll be better than going and waiting till they have a blemish. Now you're taking your good animals, that sacrificial animals, and they're going to get a blemish, so that's not so great. And so therefore now, b'di'avad, once they're mixed together, okay, well, we can allow this the Shelamim to have a time limit, even though it may become pasul. That's if it was done. We say usually di'avad. This is a longer form, di'i avad, which is really the derivation of it. Di'i, if it was, he already did it, if it already happened. However, lecha techila, that's this, but this Tosefta is saying, can you lecha techila take Shavuot money and go buy terumah and now make a time limit on the terumah? No, even Rabbi Shimon would agree that you should not do that. And now we ask, even according to Rabbi Shimon, is that true that lechatechila you cannot make something time limited and otherwise be invalid? Abaye challenges this from a Mishnah later on in this Masechet. וכולם רשאים כהנים לשנות באכילתן לאוכלן סלויין שלוקין ובושלין לתת לתוכן תבלי תחולין ותבלי תרומה דברי רבי ישמעאל. This Rabbi Ishmael here, if you look in the Mishnah later, it actually should be Rabbi Shimon. That's why it would make sense here as a challenge to Rabbi Shimon. So let's read Rabbi Shimon here. Okay, regarding all offerings that Kohanim can eat, they can prepare it any way they want. Now, we're not talking about Korban Pesach that has to be barbecued. We're talking about all other ones that they can eat it as in any way that they want. They can prepare it. They can cook it by roasting, boiling, or cooking it. And they can put spices in it. You don't have to eat the Korban raw. And the spices can be from Cholin, or they can be Terumah. And now look, this Terumah, if it's by itself, it can be in any time. There's no time limit for Terumah. But now you're taking this terumah spices and you're putting it with a korban, and now with the korban, it can only be eaten that day and that night. So we're adding a time limit to terumah, and it says you can do this lechatechila. So why is that true? You just give an answer that according to the Rabbi Shimon, lechatechila you can't do it, and therefore he can't be the author of the Tosefta above. But in this Mishnah, which is Rabbi Shimon, he says that even lechatechila you can put terumah together with the korban. Amar le hanach litruma tavlin de Rabbanan, and Rabbah answered, no, that's talking about where the spices are terumah midrabanan. Terumah is only midoraita if it's from grain, olives, and grapes. We're talking about spices here, other herbs that grow, and those, because they're only terumah midrabanan, we can be more lenient and add and give a time limit to it. Itibeh, Abaye asks a question against Rabbah from a Mishnah in Masechet Maaser Sheni. En lokhin teruma bechesef maaser mipnei shemema'et be'achilata. V'Rabbi Shimon matir. One cannot buy teruma with money of maaser. We're talking about maaser sheni. Somebody lives far away and they redeem their maaser sheni for coins. Those coins you have to bring to Jerusalem and buy food there. So Maaser Sheni is limited in that it can only be eaten in Yerushalayim, whereas Terumah can be eaten anywhere. Also, Maaser Sheni cannot be eaten by an onen, but a Terumah can be eaten by an onen. And therefore, Tanakama says one is not permitted to buy terumah with Maaser Sheni money because he is limiting where and who can eat it. However, Rabbi Shimon says it's permitted. So this is a challenge against Rabbah. Rabbah said that according to Rabbi Shimon, he says that one is allowed to cause holy food, to be voided only b'di'avad. But lechatechila, you cannot limit eating of something that will then be voided. And here it seems that Rabbi Shimon says lechatechila, it's permitted, and so challenge against Rabbah. Ishtikle, Rabbah has no answer to this. So there you go. Abaye gave a successful refutation against Rabbah. But this is not the end of the discussion, because ki ata lekamed Rav Yosef amar le amai la totbe meha. When Abaye came to Rav Yosef, he must have repeated, says, I asked this question to Rabbah and he had no answer. And then Rav Yosef said, okay, very nice, Chazak Baruch, that you brought him a challenge from Mishnah Masechet Maaser Sheni. But I wonder, why didn't you challenge him from a different Mishnah in Masechet Shvi'it? So now we're going to discuss whether this Mishnah Masechet Shvi'it is also a good refutation against Rabbah. The Mishnah teaches, En bebashilin yarak shel Shvi'it b'shemen shel teruma shelo yavo kodashim lebet hapesul v'Rabbi Shimon matir. One is not permitted to cook, according to Tanakama, vegetables of Shvi'it. Now, Shvi'it has a time limit because once there's no more of that vegetable out in the field, then you have to go and get rid of it. So this is a time limit. If you're going to cook these vegetables of Shvi'it with oil of terumah, then that oil also will have a time limit because it'll be all mixed together. And then you're going to bring holy things to psul. Holy terumah is going to end up becoming invalid. That's Tanakama. However, Rabbi Shimon says it's permitted. Sounds like he's saying it's permitted. Lechatechila. That's a challenge against Rabbah, who said that Rabbi Shimon only permits b'di'avad, but not lechatechila. So Rav Yosef says, Abaye, why didn't you ask a question from this Mishnah? אמר לאביי ולאו מי אות ביתה מהד תבלין ואמר לי הנח לתרומת תבלין דרבנן הכנמה תרומת ירק דרבנן. Abaye said, I have a good reason why I did not ask from the Mishnah Shavi'it. I already asked him about the case with spices, that you should not use spices of teruma with a korban, and so I already asked him that, and he said it was said over there. It says you can put spices of teruma with a korban. As that's so. Look, alecha techila, you're allowed to do that. I asked him that, and he already gave me an answer. No, that's talking about teruma of spices, which is the rabbanan. It's made out of other herbs, not grain or olive oil or grapes, and therefore, since it's only the rabbanan, that's not a question. And so, if I ask him about from your Mishnah Masechet Shavi'it, then I know he'll answer me the same thing. Now, this is talking about a case where this oil of teruma is made out of vegetable oil. Who said it's olive oil? Maybe it's sesame seed oil or another kind of oil, and therefore it's only teruma midrabanan, and that's why I say it's permitted lecha techila. So that's why I didn't ask from that case. But we challenge Abaye's answer here. If in fact this teruma, the oil, was drabanan, then the Mishnah should have switched the items around and should have said, if the vegetables are teruma with oil that's shavi'it, because then it would be clear. Vegetables of teruma, that's for sure drabanan. And so then it would be clearer. Okay, I understand the Mishnah doesn't want to say extra words, so many words, you have to know, but it's the same number of words if you say that the vegetables are teruma, and then I would know, that's teruma drabanan, rather than say something like shemen shel teruma, by allowing itself to say that the oil is teruma. It's opening up the possibility that's talking about olive oil. And so since it could have said it in a clearer way if it was teruma drabanan, it didn't say it that way, therefore it must be that it is in fact olive oil, which is liable to teruma mideoraita. And therefore, Rav Yosef says, this Mishnah would be a good challenge against Rabbah. But then we have another reason why this Mishnah would not be good. Velav mi ot bi te mimatnitin de matir bishimon v'amar di arab hachaname di arab. Abaye said, I already asked Rav Yosef a question from our Mishnah when an asham and shelamim are mixed together. And the Bishimon says, it's okay, you can sacrifice them as they are, and you don't have to let them graze and get a blemish. And so it looks like, even though you're limiting the time that you can eat the shelamim, the Bishimon says it's permitted. I asked from this case, and he already answered, Rabbah already answered, our Mishnah is talking about a case because the animals are already mixed up. And that's why it's already b'di'avad. So here too, I know if I would ask Rabbah from this case of the soup, then he would also tell me of the vegetable dish, then he would also tell me that, it's where the oil and the vegetables were already mixed in a bowl. They weren't cooked yet, but they're already mixed in a bowl. So now what am I going to do? You can't separate them. How could he separate them? So that's why that's called b'di'avad, and that's why you're allowed to cook them together, because they are already mixed together. So he would just say it's b'di'avad, like the case in our Mishnah. However, we challenge this answer of Abaye. If they are already mixed together, the oil and the vegetables, then how come Rabbanan say that it's prohibited? That's in the Mishnah. Here it says you are not allowed to cook them together. Well, if they're already mixed together in the bowl, well, then why can't you cook them together? Rabbanan should agree. Well, because there's no other way to do it. And so the answer is midi dehava asham ushlamim. No, it's the same like asham and shalamim in our Mishnah, where even though the animals have already been mixed together, we don't know which is an asham and which is a shalamim. The chachamim say you cannot offer them as a sacrifice. You have to let them graze till they get a blemish, and then you sell them and buy new animals. So just like over there, even though they're mixed together, you still cannot use it. So too here. But we challenge that. bere'iyah. Ha let takanta bere'iyah. No, the two cases are not the same. In the case of Asham and Shalamim, there is a way to fix it by letting them graze till they get a blemish, and then you can go buy new animals, and then you could offer Asham separately and the shalamim separately, and there will not be the shalamim you can eat for 2 days and will not come to be voided. So there's a way around it. But in this case of the vegetables and the oil that are mixed together, what are you going to do? Let it graze? There's no such thing as grazing. There's no way to undo it. And therefore we go back to our question, why did Rabbanan say that it's prohibited? It's already mixed together. So they should say that it's permitted. So it must be that it's not mixed together. Ha la dame ela la chaticha shebachatichot kevan delet takanta tochel kechamur shebahen. In fact, the case of that Mishnah of the oil and the vegetables is more similar to where you had the sacrificial animals, Ashanim and Shalamim, and they already were slaughtered, and it was already butchered, and then the pieces of each of the korbanot got mixed together, where Rabbanan agree that there's no other way, there's no way to fix it. And therefore, one eats them according to the stringent of the bunch, meaning for 1 day and 1 night only. And so this case would be the same, and therefore it should be permitted. In other words, if you really think that there was already mixed together, then there would be no reason for Rabbanan to say that you're not allowed to cook them together. Since there's no way to fix it, it should be permitted. Matkifla Ravina, midame chaticha shebachatichot, let takanta kelal. Hi, ita takanta bischita. Now Ravina came to defend Abaye, and he says, wait, the case of the oil and vegetables that are mixed together is not the same as the pieces of korban that are butchered up and all got mixed up, because over there is really no way at all that you could separate them. But here, when you have the oil and the vegetables, you can squeeze out the vegetables, squeeze the oil out of the vegetables, and you can separate it again. So therefore it should be okay. That's a defense of Abaye. V'Rav Yosef. And now what would Rav Yosef say to that? Hechi nischot. How are you going to squeeze it out? Nischot tuva kamafsid b'shevi'it. If you're going to squeeze it out very hard, then you're going to damage the vegetables that are shevi'it vegetables, and you should not do that. You should not treat shevi'it vegetables like that. Nischot purta sof sof yarube mi'arav. If you're going to only squeeze them out a little bit, then you're not going to get all the oil out, and it still will be a mixture. And therefore, Rav Yosef defends his reading that the reason why, that if it was really mixed together already, then Rabbanan would have to say that is permitted. But the fact that Rabbanan say it's prohibited to cook these together is because they have not yet been mixed together. It's still separate, and saying, listen, you have these separate things, do not put them together. And it's that case where Rabbi Shimon says, it's okay, you can put them together, and because it's okay, even though that will limit the amount of time that you can eat the terumah, Rabbi Shimon says that's okay, even lechatechila. And so therefore, according to Rav Yosef, this would be a good challenge against Rabbah. Now we bring yet another challenge against Rabbi Shimon. It could be Rav Yosef or it could be Abaye that's bringing this challenge. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Lamahorat mebi ashamo velugo imo veomer. Im sham mesora hare ze ashamo veze lugo. Ve'im lav asham ze shel shalme nedaba. We're talking about a case where we're not sure if he is a mesora or not. So he wants to become pure. So he has to bring his korban in order to be purified as a mesorah. If he is a metzorah, but maybe he's not a metzorah. Now you can't just bring an asham for fun. If you're not a metzorah, then you're not allowed to bring it. So what's he going to do? So Rabbi Shimon explains. He'll wait the days that he has to, and then on the next day, if he is a mesorah, he has to bring the korbanot. He'll bring an asham and a log of oil. That's what, if he is a mesorah, that's what he would have to bring. And then he makes a condition. He says, if I am a Mesorah, then here is my Korban Asham, and here is my log of oil. Ve'im lav, and if I am not a Mesorah, well then, Asham zeh shel Shameh Nedava, then this animal that I'm bringing will be a Korban Shelamim that I am donating. It's the same type of animal, and the procedure is more or less the same. And therefore, as we said in our Mishnah, you can bring an Asham as a Shelamim or a Shelamim as an Asham. Now, how will you do the procedure? Because there are some differences between them. You'll take the stringencies of both. Ve'oto Asham ta'on shechita basafon. We will slaughter it only in the north, because in case it's an Asham, it has to be in the north. If it's a Shelamim, it could be anywhere, so that's fine. Umatan behonot, and we're going to take some of the blood and put it on the right thumb and the big toe of the Mesorah in case it's a Mesorah. And if not, okay, so what? So you just put some blood on him for no reason. Usmicha, unsachim, utnufat hazeh v'shok. These things are certainly required for a shelamim. They may be required for an asham also, to put semicha, to put your hands on the head. And you have to bring libations with it. And you have to bring also the breast and the thigh that you wave. All that you have to bring, certainly, in case it's a shelamim. V'nechal leyom ve'layla, and the part that's edible has to be eaten by only for one day and one night by kohanim, in case it's an asham. So here we have a whole series of things where it's according to the Bishimon, and it sounds like lecha techila. You can bring this even though you're taking shelamim meat. And potentially, if it's a shelamim, you're limiting the amount of time and who can eat it, and you're allowed to do this lechet techila. That's a challenge against Rabbah, because according to Rabbah, the Bishimon only says that you can do this b'di'avad. That's the challenge. The answer is takuneh gabra shaneh. No, in order to help a person, that's different. You have this poor guy. He is safek mesorah. The only thing worse than being a total mesorah is being a safek mesorah. So what are you going to do? You're going to tell him, "Oh, sorry, you're tameh. You might be a mesorah. So therefore, you have to do all the stringencies of being a mesorah. Everything is tameh, just in case. Okay, I want to be tahor. Oh no, you can't be tahor because you can't bring in Hashem because maybe you're not tameh. So now he can never become tahor. So in order to help out this guy, therefore we have no other choice. It's kind of like b'di'avad. He's already a safek mesorah. So we have to help him out. That's why the Bishimon would agree in this case. So Rabbah could defend himself and say, this case is different. Ha-tenach asham, log ma'ikal memar. Now, more further on this case, we understand what you do with the animal. Okay, you treat it according to the stringencies of an asham and a shelamim. But how about the oil? If he is a mesorah, great, he brings his log of oil. But if he's not, you can't just bring cholin, oil, into the Bet HaMikdash and use it in the service. De'amar log zeh yehen nedaba. He makes a condition. If I'm not a mesorah, then I want to donate a log of oil. You can do that. Ve'dir mesorahu ba'e mikmatz. Dimikmitz. Now, if you donate a log of oil, that's fine, as a korban, then the procedure is different. If you donate a log of oil, it's kind of like a meal offering. The kohen has to take a kometz. He has to take a handful. He can't take it like meal offering. He pours it. And then he has to burn it on the mizbeach. So if it is, then so maybe he is not a mesorah and he has to do the kemitzah. He does the kemitzah. He removes a handful of oil from the log. V'dilma mesorahu ba'ematan sheba. Wait, but maybe he is a mesorah, and then he has to sprinkle. Remember, he sprinkles not only from the blood, but also sprinkles from the oil 7 times towards the Kodesh. So don't you have to do that? Okay, he does that too. Hold on. If he already did the kemitzah, so he has a log of oil exactly. He pours out some of the oil for the kemitzah. But now he's missing a full log of oil for the mesorah ceremony. It's not good. He doesn't have enough. You have to have a full log in order to do the sprinkling for the mesorah. And the answer is okay, he brings a little bit more oil and he fills it up. As it says in Mishnah, Masechet Negaim, if you check in the log, oh, it's lacking, it's a little bit less, and he didn't yet sprinkle the oil, that's okay. You could just bring a little bit more oil, fill it to the top, and then you can do the sprinkling. So that's what he'll do here. So you got it. He brings a log. First, they take a kemitzah in case he's not a mitzorah. Then they fill it back up, and then he takes that oil and sprinkle from it and sprinkles. Wait, but don't you have to burn the part the part that you removed? You have to burn it in case he's not a mitzorah. Yes, he does. He also burns it. Emat. Now the question is, when will he burn it? If you are going to burn that handful after you sprinkle the 7 sprinklings for a mesorah, well then that will be equivalent to leftovers, shirayim. Let's say it's a meal offering, and you take a kometz, so you have the kometz, and the law is that you can only burn that kometz if all of the leftovers remain intact. But if the leftovers are lacking from the time of the kemitzah until the time of its burning, then you cannot burn the kometz at all. And the same thing is for oil. Okay, you have a log of oil. You removed some of the oil in case it's a nedava. And then you take the rest of the oil and you sprinkle some of it 7 times. But now it's lacking, and then therefore the law is that you are not allowed to burn the oil if the other part of it, the leftovers, are lacking. So it can't be in that order. Oh, are you going to burn it first? You have this log of oil, and you remove a handful, and you burn it first, and then you sprinkle 7 times as a mitzorah, and that's another problem. Kol shemimenu la'ishim harehu bebal taktiru. There's a law that when you have something and part of it you're supposed to burn on the mizbech and part of it you're not supposed to burn, then you're not allowed to, once you burn the part that is on there, you're not allowed to burn or sacrifice the other part that was not placed on the mizbeach. Anything kol mimenu, anything that comes from it and is put on the ishim, is put on the mizbeach, you cannot burn that anymore. Now you're not burning the leftovers, but you are sprinkling it, and sprinkling is equivalent to sacrificing. You're sprinkling it towards the kodesh. So therefore, if you take the kemitzah and then burn it first, then the rest of the leftovers you cannot use for the sprinkling. So we're stuck either way. Amar Rav Yehuda bered Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi demasek lehu l'shem asim. And so the answer is we make a condition and say, listen, if this is in fact, if he is a mesorah, and this handful that I took here, I don't have to burn. So then I'm going to put it on the mizbeach, not as a sacrifice, but rather as fuel, like putting wood. So I'm not making a sacrifice, and therefore the rest of it I can still use as a sacrifice, and I sprinkle it. And if he is not a misorah, then I'll have in mind that this is I am burning it on the mizbeach as a sacrifice, and I don't have to do the sprinkling, so that doesn't matter. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, L'rech nichoach iyata ma'aleh, aval ata ma'aleh l'shem asim. And this is permitted because in a baraita, Rabbi Eliezer teaches that once that l'rech nichoach is a law that you cannot offer anything that is leaven and honey on the mizbeach. So every meal offering that you put on the mizbeach has to be matzah or plain flour. It cannot be chametz, no chametz or devash. So that Rabbi Eliezer teaches that's only true if you're putting it on the mizbeach as a korban l'rech nichoach. But if you're just putting it as wood, then you just had some bread and you want to use it as fuel, that's okay. So we learn from here that if there's something, you have some oil and you want to burn it as fuel, that's permitted to do so. So we make that the condition. Hold on. We have with the left, after you take kemitzah, then we said you have to refill the log because now you took some, and in case it is a metzorah, we need a full log. But once you add more to that log, there's going to be a little bit added on that you did not take kemitzah from it. And if he's not a mesorah and this is a nedava, now you have to take kemitzah from all of it that you have. Now you added some more after the kemitzah that was not nikmatz from. And so the answer is de parik le, that you redeem it. That little bit that you added, you're going to give money instead and say, I'm redeeming it, therefore that little bit that I added, in case he's not a mitzorah and it's a nedava, and I didn't need to add that, so I'm going to give money instead, and that will be redeemed, and it's not really, it's chulin, and therefore it doesn't count as part of the offering, and I don't have to take a kemitzah from it. We ask, where did you do this redemption? Where was the oil when you did the redemption? If the oil was inside the courtyard, well now, as soon as you do redemption, that little bit that you added in to top it off is going to be chulin, and now you're bringing chulin into the azara, which is not allowed. If you're going to take the whole thing out, well now you're taking it out first. You're taking something that is holy and you're taking it outside. You're not allowed to do that. It becomes pasul. So you can't take it out either before you redeem it. Le'olam gavai cholin memela havyan. So the answer is no. In fact, we redeem it inside. And although it will become cholin, but it becomes cholin by itself. What you're not allowed to do is take cholin and actively bring it into the courtyard. But I made it sanctified and brought it in. Okay, good. That's okay. Now I just take money and say I'm redeeming that. So now by itself, I didn't actively bring chulin into the mikdash. It just became chulin while in the mikdash, and therefore that's permitted. Rabbi Shimon and mitnadebin shemen. Hold on, Rabbi Shimon has another law, and he happens to say that you cannot offer as a nedava oil. You cannot donate oil freely, and therefore this whole situation, this whole solution was according to Rabbi Shimon, and you have to be able to donate oil as one of the conditions, just in case he's not a mesorah. But Rabbi Shimon says you're not supposed to donate oil. And the answer is takune gabra shaneh. Even Rabbi Shimon would say to help a person who's a safek mesorah, there he would say, okay, fine. Otherwise, lichatechila is not a good idea. You should not donate oil. But if it's a difficult situation, then Rabbi Shimon would agree that it's permitted. Now we have one follow-up question about the case of a safek mesorah. Yatib Rav Rechumeh kameh Ravina. Rav Rechumeh was sitting in front of Ravina. V'yateve kamad mishmed Rav Huna bar Tachlifa. And Rav Rechumeh quoted the following statement in the name of Rav Huna bar Tachlifa. The question is, V'nema asham ze yehe asham talui. How come Rabbi Shimon before said that if you have someone who's a safek mesorah, so he'll bring an animal and say a condition. If I am a mesorah, it'll be a nasham. If I'm not a mesorah, it'll be a shelamim. Instead of saying if I'm not a mesorah, it'll be a shelamim, why not say if I'm not a mesorah, I'll bring a nasham talui? Why can't he decide to donate a nasham talui? Generally, a nasham talui is required when you may have to bring a chatat. You ate something that might be cheleh, but you're not sure, so you bring a nasham talui. In this case, why not offer to bring an asham talui if he's not a mesorah? And that way you won't have the problem of limiting the time of eating a shelamim, because asham talui and a regular asham are the same time, same procedure, and then you won't get into trouble. So how come Rabbi Shimon did not say offer it as a condition, offer it as an asham talui? Why say shelamim? Shema'mina man tanab de palik aled Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon hu damar en mitnadebin asham talui. It must be that the Tana who disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer in this regard, Rabbi Eliezer says that one can donate an asham talui. So who disagrees? It must be Rabbi Shimon, and he says you cannot donate an asham talui. Since you can't voluntarily donate an asham talui, that's why he didn't say the other, if I'm not a mesorah, bring a asham talui. That's why he said it must be a shelamim. Amar le Torah, imri b'dichre mechalefi lach. However, Ravina responded to Rav Rechumeh and said, Torah, where is the Torah? You should know better than to give this suggestion. You are confusing lambs with rams. A leper has to bring a lamb which is 1 year old, and an asham talui is a ram which is 2 years old. So you cannot give us the suggestion that, I'm going to bring an animal If it's an Asham, if I'm a Mesorah, let it be an Asham. Otherwise, let it be Asham Talui. The ages of these two animals are different, and therefore you cannot. This is not a good suggestion, and you cannot learn anything about what Rabbi Shimon says about this. It would be impossible to do so anyway. So, thank you for the thought, but actually, it would be impossible to begin with. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.